Hey, Smart News. We have a couple updates for you today, but I also want to weave into our reporting some personal perspective, tackling the question, what does it actually take to evacuate from Afghanistan? You've heard a lot of different reports about what this looks like on the ground, and it's a lot of information coming at you. So what I want to do right now is take just a minute or two, go over what the State Department, Defense Department, White House have been saying today. We're sitting on Wednesday, less than a week until what would be the full withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan. And then I want to bring in a friend of mine who's had a very unique experience trying to help someone and successfully help someone leave Afghanistan. And she learned a lot in the process. So big picture overall, what you should know at this point is that the United States has evacuated more than 80,000 people. The majority of these folks are Afghans. And we know that today because the State Department came out finally with the number saying that they believed about 6,000 Americans were in Afghanistan, and that they've been able to evacuate approximately 4,500. So the number that they're working with that they believe are left in the country, because apparently about 500 were able to evacuate over the last several hours, is about 1,000 Americans that they're still waiting to make contact with. An important point to all of this is that someone can be an American, a dual citizen, and they're able to leave the country. They may have permission to do that, but they may have an entire family that doesn't have that status, and that can get complicated as well. So these are the numbers as they stand today. An important thing I just heard from the general at Ramstein Airfield, in Germany, is that a third of the refugees that are coming off the planes, and they're going to a couple different sites, Germany, Italy, and eventually Spain, if not now, as like these transfer periods or transfer sites. The White House called them lily pads, so refugees are going a couple different places where then they're being checked and then processed and then taken elsewhere. He said a third are children, a third are male, and a third are female. Also important to note, the White House said that there's no cap. So although we were looking at a cap to get an understanding of how many Americans were in the country so we can know, have we been successful in evacuating all the Americans, there doesn't seem to be a number, an overarching number of how many Afghans that the United States is looking to get out. So that remains unknown, and the clock is ticking. And what's really important to note, as everybody that knows that's ever, let's just say ever moved locations, right? You have a move date, let's say we have a withdrawal date, but your timeline actually backs up a few days. So if everybody has to be out by August 31st, let's just say midnight, then you know that you need to have almost everybody out before that, right? It can't just happen at the last minute, or it would appear. So we're struggling with a little bit of a timeline issue here, and this is something that I want to talk about with our guest. So let me go ahead and invite into the room. Ryan Manion and I met several years ago. I was thinking about this about a decade ago, Ryan. Is that right? I was thinking about the very first time that we met was probably back in 2011, 2012.
Yeah,
And that was a great experience. Why don't you, let's just set this up. This is Ryan Manion. She's one of the founders of the Travis Manion Foundation. And tell us a little bit, Ryan, before we get started, because I really want to hear this story. I was surprised to hear it this weekend from you. Why did you found the Travis Manion Foundation? Tell me a little bit about that backstory.
sure. So my brother was a first lieutenant in the Marine Corps. He was killed in Iraq on his second tour of duty. And my mom founded the Travis Manion Foundation right after his death. We started out as a small memorial fund in the Philadelphia area and very quickly grew to one of the nation's leading veteran serving organizations. We used the 5 words that my brother spoke before leaving for that tour of duty, if not me, then who, as our rally cry. And our organization is all about building community. So we are a community of 130,000 members across the country, made up of veterans, families of the fallen, and inspired civilians. And we are out in our communities, strengthening our communities with service projects to athletic events, and working with our next generation of leaders.
There's so many cool things about the foundation. One of the things I love as a journalist is that you go into, let's say, a school, and you'll tell that school, because not everyone has a connection to the military. You'll tell them a story of a soldier that made the ultimate sacrifice. And then they get to do a service project in honor of that soldier. So you keep the story moving, and so that the story is not forgotten. And it's a really beautiful thing. So we met at the first time you were going to do your first foundation gala or gala. I never know exactly how to pronounce that word.
Yeah.
And you asked me to help MC it, which was really exciting. And one of the things that your foundation does is you do the Marine Corps Marathon. And I thought, well, if I'm going to MC the event, then I'm going to have to run a marathon, which I've never done before. So I did a little bit, you know, it was I had to earn the right to MC that event. And so that was great. We've been friends. And so now we've developed this amazing friendship, and it's been incredible to see what you've been able to do. What Travis said when he was asked about why does he serve? Why is he going to go? Why is he going to deploy? If not me, then who? Is something that has been echoing in my head as you told me this story over the weekend about someone reaching out to you. And really, if not you, Ryan, then who else, right, was going to help this individual? So tell us a little bit of the backstory, because this is not something that you thought that you would necessarily be involved with, helping someone evacuate from Afghanistan.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that was really important after Travis was killed was his interpreter. He became very good friends with his interpreter, a young man named Mustafa. He goes by Nick now. He's living in the United States in Florida. And my brother actually wrote him a recommendation letter to get his visa just 10 days before Travis was killed. And so Travis was killed in April. And that January, actually New Year's Eve, we spent with Mustafa in our house in Pennsylvania. And I've created a very strong friendship with him. And so I had full understanding of the bonds that are created between our service members and these interpreters. I got a note about 2 years ago from an Afghan interpreter who had started following me on my public Facebook page, and I had posted something about Nick, and he wrote telling me about himself and telling me, I'm Bashamal, I'm an interpreter in Afghanistan. I love that you share friendship with your brother's interpreter, thanking me for my brother's service. And we got to know each other that way through the power of social media. And I followed his story for the last couple of years as he was working through the SIV process. And about 2 months ago, he said, everything is completed. My package is completed. I will be in America soon. I thought that he was not in Afghanistan. And I shot him a text when all of this happened. And I said, Bashamal, are you still in Afghanistan? And he wrote me back immediately. And he said, his words were, yes, I am still in hell. And from there, I just thought, well, what do? I have to do something, right? And I had no idea where to begin. But I started the process of trying to identify what needed to be done. I didn't know anything about how people were getting out. I said, well, go to the airport. You've got all your paperwork. And he shared with me, it's not that easy. I've tried to go to the airport 4 times, and every time I've been turned away. My wife and my 3-year-old son have been turned away by the Taliban. It's getting more and more dangerous. And so there was a few days that I felt kind of helpless, and I was just trying to talk to him and saying, let's see what's happening on the news. Let's be patient. And then I started to notice that there were, for better lack of word, there were underground operations that were happening with veterans back here at home. And I got linked with a Marine Corps friend that served with my brother. And we devised a plan to get Bashamal out of Afghanistan. And I'm going on little sleep right now, but I'm thinking that was on last Saturday that he got on the plane. And we were able to connect with another friend who is serving in Kabul right now at a certain gate. And out of crowds of thousands, he was able to pluck my friend and his family out of that crowd and bring them into the gates. They're now in Qatar, waiting to find out where they're headed next.
I'm getting emotional when you said the text about I'm in hell, because we have to remember, and I don't think I would know this if I didn't marry my husband. I had no military connection growing up, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there in our audience. Some of them are military families, some of them are not. And so I just want everyone to know that I straddle both of those worlds. For those of us who didn't grow up with this, there may be a misunderstanding too about what these interpreters do. I mean, they are with the soldiers. They are putting their lives completely on the line in so many ways. And even when the soldiers leave, they're still very much in harm's way. the man that you are helping, he has a young son. And as you described to me, I was hoping that you could also describe to our audience, they were they were trying, they were at the airport. It's 90 degrees during the day in Kabul, and he's texting you. So can you just describe, because he was also sending you photos.
Sure.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what that was like? Because you're back stateside and
Sure.
you're a mom of three. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that was like the hardest part for me, because as I was tracking the news, you're hearing all the reports. It's get to the airport. If you're an SIV applicant, if you're a US citizen, you have safe passage, get to the airport. And so I'm giving him that guidance, like, well, just go to the airport. And he started sending me pictures and showing me these crowds. And honestly, the biggest hurdle is getting through these crowds. We got him to the airport at 4 a.m. at a certain gate. And, we kind of said, you have to just post here. We gave him a sign to hold up. But our friend had to search for hours and hours. It was 8 hours until he was identified. And I was getting texts. He was sending me texts saying it's getting too hot. And he was sending me texts of his 3-year-old son saying Atal is overheating. And I was left with this idea that I was giving direction on what he should do. And I felt so conflicted between this idea. Like, I'm a mother and I've got a young son, and I'm thinking, part of me wanted to say, just turn around, just go back to your safe house, be safe. And I felt like I had such a huge responsibility on my hands. And, it was minutes before I was going to make the call to say, you've got to turn around, because he kept sending me frantic texts about the state of where his son was, that I received a text from my friend in Kabul, and he just wrote, I have him. Mm-hmm. And I knew that he was safe. But I had that was around 4 a.m. East Coast time. It was an emotional letdown for me. I was laughing, I was crying, I was delirious, but I was so happy that he was safe. But within 60 seconds, all I could think about was the fact that he was just one family that was standing in that crowd with small children. And that's where I'm left today, knowing that my friend is safe in Qatar, but knowing that there are so many that are still looking for that same miraculous opportunity. And honestly, it's a miracle that happened for him.
So, and I don't want to get, I know your context on the ground in Afghanistan, very fortunate that person was courageous enough as well to go into the crowd and essentially grab them.
Yes.
What do you know about that? So once they got into the airport, was it sort of all good and like they had their paperwork and what about that part?
So, and again, I've learned all this in the last week. But what I learned is, because when I heard I have him, I'm like, great, he's through the gate. He's going to get on a plane in 10 minutes. I didn't know how it worked.
Sure.
And then he texted me and he said, and I actually had been able to secure him on a flight list with No One Left Behind, which is an incredible organization. If people are looking for like where to go, they have been fighting for our allies, our Afghan allies, for many, many years. And they had several flights that were coming in, and I had gotten him on a flight list. But there's 2 steps of the process. You go into the airport, you get through kind of the initial screening, document screening, and then you have to go through a biometrics station where you're fingerprinted. And Bashamel told me, many people got through that first screening through the gate, but once you got to that biometric screening, there were many people that were turned away. So when they're saying that there is a rigorous process for how they're making sure people have the correct paperwork, that is happening as much as I know.
Well, and I just want to point out, we had a great question that came into us about numbers. Yep. And someone was asking, well, how do you fact check the numbers? And let me just be 100% clear. There is no fact checking the numbers. Like, there's no numbers. There's no master list. We don't know all the people that could come in right now. We don't know all the people that are in different there's no way to do that right now. And that's part of the chaos and confusion that's part of this story, right, that I'm sure can be dissected at another time. I just wanted to grab my computer, Ryan, because you mentioned No One Left Behind. The AP just put out, just like right before we jumped on, the Associated Press put out a newswire that actually was quoting one of the people that's in charge of No One Left Behind. And listen to what they say right now. As of today, we still have 1,200 Afghans with visas that are outside the airport that haven't got in. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, we're waiting to hear from the U.S. government and haven't heard yet. This is combined with reports now that the airport and some of the gates to the airport or entryways to the airport have been closed to Afghans, mm-hmm. like the ones that like your friends.
Yes.
So because you've now been in contact with others after this situation, you were posting about this situation. Now you've received other requests and tell us a little bit about the people. There's no way for us at this point to confirm identities. We could have people send us their IDs. Can we confirm all of these stories? No. So I want to be clear about that. We heard from the U.S. government that some people are saying they have certain status that don't. But just tell us about some of the people that are reaching out to you at this point.
Sure. I felt it was important to make this story public because, as with anything, when you put a face and a name, and I learned that very quickly when we started the Travis Manion Foundation. My brother Travis would hate one thing about the foundation, that it was named the Travis Manion Foundation, because our men and women that serve are very humble individuals, and they're the first to say it's not about me. But Travis's name represents this generation of men and women that have given their lives in service to this country. And I looked at Bashamal's story and I thought, I need to bring light to what is happening here. So by putting his story out there, I became inundated with requests for people begging for help. And it's been one of the things that has been hard to sleep at night as I go to sleep. And a lot of them coming in are from women who are saying, please help me, I'm going to die. And, it's hard to turn that off. But the fact of the matter is that there were 18,000 SIV applicants before this all happened. The evacuation started to happen, combined with their families. That's over 80,000 people. Those numbers are confirmed. So when you're putting those up against the number of Afghans that are getting out, I don't see how we can possibly get everybody out before August 31st. I continue to say that I remain hopeful, and I hope that there is a plan going forward for these men and women who, again, we made a commitment to, right? We, for 20 years, have served alongside them. They put their lives at risk for our United States military. And so what I have been beating the drum with is that we have to honor that commitment, because I think it becomes, honestly, a foreign policy issue going forward. There are going to be conflicts going forward, and how can our allies trust us going forward if they're seeing that we're leaving them behind in this situation? I look at it from that perspective.
And there was a scenario that was brought up during the State Department briefing. Again, one that I can't confirm from my vantage point here, but asked by a journalist, which was, let's an example of a special immigration visa could be an interpreter, for example. But there's other people that worked with the U.S. government for years that don't necessarily have that status. One could be someone that worked at the embassy for a long time. Maybe they were applying for a green card. It could be something different than that. So it's not just that, and that's really important. It's not just U.S. citizens. It's not just special immigration visas. It's also people that we've collaborated with. And really important, Ryan, which you've noted, just because someone has a special immigration visa or someone in the family has a green card, they have families. And
yeah, I think so. I have, again, my, our plan to get Bashama through, while it was, I said it was an operation with 3 people, but it worked. And because it worked, and I had friends reaching out to me about their interpreters and friends that they had over there. And we had continued to do that for several nights, and we were putting groups together to get them out. There was a young man named Safi, and he was connected to me through a Marine that served there and had served with him. And I put him in a group, and our good friend on the ground was able to pull his family through. Well, he's a young kid. He's in his early 20s, not married. He was with his three sisters and his mom. And at the gate, they said, "You can come, but they can't." And he wouldn't leave them. And he was texting me at 2 a.m. saying, "I can't leave my sisters and my mom, and I'm turning around." And so, again, another example, and how many cases of that. The other problem is too, is that, your SIV, and again, I may be butchering this, but what I have learned in the last week is that it is attached, your applicant number is attached to your spouse and your children. But if your children are over 21 years old, they are not eligible to fall under your SIV number. So you have parents who are there who have a special immigrant visa. They can bring their spouse, but, oh, your child's 22. Sorry, they can't go. So again, it's these cracks in the foundation that happen everywhere with every type of process. But when you see them and you see the humanity to them and you have these faces and you're hearing these stories, it's difficult.
What is your understanding about what's happening now? Does it seem that you're hearing that certain entry places are closed? Is your contact on the ground able to help go grab people from the crowds? Are the crowds just as big? What are you hearing?
The crowds are just as big. And again, I'm talking to one specific person on the ground who shared with me that, our access point where we were getting in is now only allowing green card holders and American citizens. So SIV applicants are not getting in at the checkpoint that we were previously getting them in. And, it went from having full success the first few nights after Bashamal was put through, and we had a couple more nights where the entire group went in, to last night. There were 40 people we tried to get through. Only 27 of them made it. Two of them got stuck with the Taliban. We have lost contact with them. So the window, as we see it, is closing in terms of coming up against that August 31st deadline that is looming on us.
And there's a big question about that deadline. Right now it seems to be that that's what's going to be held, and maybe that changes. But another interesting question, I'm going to see if I can pull this one, was asked at the State Department, which is, why are you listening to the Taliban? And it was a really good question. They were saying, well, why are we letting them dictate? Because we're there now, so we can dictate a certain amount. But it seems that the State Department they feel like the way that they're operating is the best way and the safest way to try to get people out at this time. Whether or not it's effective is going to be a whole other story. Ryan, can you tell us, there was a moment where your brother's name was shouted, and I'd love for you to tell, just to understand again how miraculous some of this is. And I don't know, not all of it can be totally explained by facts and all of this, but this was really a moment that just struck me.
Yeah, this definitely seemed like divine intervention to me. But at the time, again, Bashamal and his family were waiting for close to 8 hours, and I was getting desperate, thinking, okay, we hadn't heard from our contact for a couple hours at that point, and I thought, this isn't going to work. And so I was frantically trying to think, and I said, send me a picture of where you are right now. And so he sent a picture, and it was a fence, and he said, all Army guys. And I said, those aren't Army guys, those are Marines. Being the daughter and sister of a Marine, I knew the Marine Corps uniform.
And you can't make that mistake, people. Yes. We're going to need to do a quiz later.
Yes. And I said, those are Marines. So I started sending him pictures of Travis and our foundation logo, because, there's a building at Quantico named after Travis. A big Marine Corps award is named after Travis. And again, unfortunately, much to his dismay, I'm sure, he's known in the Marine Corps. His name is known. And so I said, go up to the gate. So once he had gotten in and he was standing there and our contact had brought him in, he showed the picture. And I said, just start telling people I am friends with Travis Manion's sister, and start showing them these pictures. And he sent me a text, and he said, I am with Guy. He knows Travis. He said, anything you need, I know Travis Manion. And I mean, again, it was like a little God wink for me. It was part of the story that, just to think full circle, my brother, who was killed almost 15 years ago, just played some sort of role in the situation. That was personal for me.
Absolutely. What about now, Ryan? And I'll ask anyone that's on with us live if they have any questions, and maybe we can take a few questions. But what are you doing now? Like, how...
I mean, right now, honestly, I am talking to people a half a world away. I'm checking the clock in Kabul, and responding to messages, and providing any guidance I can. I'm tracking, obviously, the news, but also talking to anybody I can on the ground to find any sort of information that I can provide. I was just sharing with my friend. I said, I can't turn it off without at least saying to every message that I receive, keep hope, keep praying, keep hoping, be patient, be hopeful. One of the things that I heard today, and there's a lot of press conferences going on. I think it was
Blinken. Yes.
Blinken.
Yeah.
He had said that while the deadline is October 31st, he alluded to this idea that they would continue trying to get people out past that date.
Yes.
It was a little bit convoluted in the way it was said, but I'm like, I heard that. So I'm going to remain hopeful for that and continue working to see, because I think there's this fever pitch, right? There's all of these people that are like, if we're not out by August 31st, that's it. And so I think what needs to happen is we need to start having an understanding of what comes next and how we can provide a way for these people that don't get out at this deadline to find their way. The one message that it came in literally before I jumped on with you was a picture of a woman sent me a picture of her 3-year-old daughter. And she said, I don't want this future for my daughter. Can you help me? And yeah, I mean, I'm certainly going to try. So
yeah, for sure. That was a little bit of an opening. What's going to happen after August 31st? Are people going to be stuck is essentially the question.
Yeah.
Will there be a working airport? Will there be a working government? I mean, these are huge questions,
right,
about how people are even, able to leave the country or people to come back in, and so that's something else. Lauren, Isabel, so many are asking, how can they help? What do you think would be the best way? I mean, from your vantage point, if someone wants to help, what would you say?
I would push people to organizations like No One Left Behind. I mean, again, they are doing the work on the ground at Kabul. I will say, not to give my organization a tap on the back, but one of the things we've been doing is, because I met with my team and I said, we need to meet this moment where we are good. And so one of the things we did last week is just a few days ago was a back to school campaign with Afghan refugees that are already here. And we delivered essential school supplies to them, just trying to acclimate them and make them feel comfortable. TMF is not, this is my own personal crusade. I will preference that. But the Travis Manion Foundation is doing things here at home, and we will continue to as the resettlement efforts come. And more Afghan allies are coming into our country. And then finally, and you hear this all the time when there's anything going on, but pick up your phone and call your representative. And don't just call them once, but call them every single day. And question again how they can let a humanitarian crisis like this unfold before our eyes. And what are they going to do about it? They represent you. And so they need to provide you answers.
Really good advice. Dana was saying that she's sure that your brother is very proud of you. When you think of that, if not me, then who now, Ryan? When you're thinking about this situation, I mean, it seems like the phrase really fits, doesn't it?
It takes on new meaning to me. I mean, again, for the last 15 years, every single day, since my brother was killed in Iraq, I've told myself that I need to to live by those 5 words. Some days living by if not me, then who is just not losing my cool on my kids that day. That's my if not me, then who moment. But this seems like a bigger one. And, as I posted today, I shared a bunch of notes that I had gotten this morning because I wanted people to see. And I said, I don't know how I found myself in this place, but I'm here and I'm not going to not do nothing. I'm going to do something. And so I think each of us, all of us are feeling that way. There's so many
Absolutely.
people, what can I do? And it's that helplessness that is so hard for all of us right now, but especially our military community. And I think that is also so important to note. One of the things we continue to say to our membership at TMF, the veterans and families of the fallen that are part of our community, is that, the arc of history is long. And your service mattered. And what is going on right now, it hurts. And I'll reference General Berger, who the Marine Corps Commandant, and he sent a letter out to the entire Marine Corps just last week, documenting what was happening right now. But in part of that was just so poignant. He said, was your service worth it? Yes. Does this hurt? Yes. And you can feel both of those things at the same time. So what I continue to say to my friends that are veterans that are struggling is like, no matter what, your service mattered. And we need to keep pushing that narrative out, because while we are dealing with a crisis in Afghanistan, I'm fearful that the crisis will continue back here for these veterans that are struggling really bad with what they're seeing here.
Right. Absolutely. Can you imagine being some of the soldiers on the ground, the Marines, 82nd Airborne, they're watching these crowds each and every day. And in some cases, they're the ones responsible for letting them in or not.
Yeah.
And that sort of here that many of them have probably deployed to theater, and in some cases, had to work within certain restrictions while in combat in Afghanistan. And now they're back and they're watching this. And who wouldn't want to help? Who wouldn't want to help? And here they are standing there witnessing all of this. And, they're not getting a break. They're not getting a break from this. They're in this, and they're also in danger, and with a lot of unknown about how they could even behave if they were attacked, for example.
Yeah. I mean, I think of my friend and who's there, who I hope everybody in America someday learns his name, because he has single-handedly saved hundreds and hundreds of Afghan allies over the past 10 days. But this young man not just risked his life, which I think every service member is willing to do. That's why they raise their right hand. But he risked his entire career in what he was doing. This is not something that was protocol.
Right.
And he knew and continues to know that he's risking his career. But again, I think he's looking into the eyes of these children that are staring in front of him and saying, if not me, then who?
Right. Right. And there's protocol, and then there's what's right in that moment. And it sounds like he was making a choice, but not without risks, and none of this is without risks. Well, Ryan, this is amazing. I'm going to make sure to put the links and tag all the organizations. I know plugging your organization wasn't the reason to come on, but I think people should really know there's a lot of military or veterans organizations. Not all of them are equal. There's a handful that we talk about here on Smarter News. The Travis Manion Foundation is one of them. It's trusted. Now that you've met Ryan, you know who's behind it. And although this is not an official platform of the Travis Manion Foundation to do rescue missions in Afghanistan, Ryan's single-handedly doing it herself. So if you need to check out our website, or if you like to, or here's something else I just want to mention really quick. There are these, the 9/11 hero runs that your organization does. And we're going to be quickly moving. This is a lot. I just think everyone, we are really witnessing history together. Afghanistan, the pandemic, we're going to mark 20 years since 9/11. And as soon as we get past that August 31st deadline, we are speeding to that mark. And that has all sorts of emotions too. The 9/11 Heroes runs are incredible, Ryan, and anyone can do it, right? In their own community, and kind of find a way maybe to come together this year when maybe in past years it didn't feel necessarily the same connection, but might feel differently. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that before you go?
Sure. So we started one of our big initiatives at the Travis Manion Foundation are the 9/11 Heroes Runs, and we had at our largest in 2019. 2020 was all virtual because of COVID, but in 2019 we had 90 5K runs across the world, 60 domestic, 30 internationally, and because 9/11 is such an important and pivotal moment in our nation's history, we wanted to make sure that we were bringing communities together around September 11th to honor the service and sacrifice of our first responders, our men and women in uniform. And with the 20th anniversary coming up, you know, we knew the importance of it, and then this happens, and it makes it even more important. We have 45 runs across the country happening this year, live in-person races. But because of COVID, you can also register as a virtual runner. And just, again, people want to do something. So what can you do this 9/11? You can get out and walk and reflect, run and reflect. For us, it's all about making sure that we're putting this in front of people. We're making sure people remember, and we're making sure our next generation understands the service and sacrifice of our men and women who serve our country.
It's incredible. So I liked how you put in, you can walk. You don't
Yes.
necessarily have to run the 5K. So if there's anyone intimidated, we can just walk. You can stroll. You can have a baby stroll. There's all sorts of different ways you can participate. Yes. And they've all been done, by the way.
And I've done all of them.
Yes. At different times of our pregnancies or our lives, as the world turns for us, Ryan, we just add children and foundations and news organizations. Here we are. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Ryan, for this opportunity. And let's stay in touch, because I'd like to continue to share, as you're learning more, now that Smarter News knows more about you, to share kind of what you're experiencing over the next several days, and maybe learn a little bit more what's happening on the ground, but also, you know, how we can help here at home. So thank you. It's so great to see you. And I miss you.
I want to thank you. I miss you too. But I want to thank you for the way that you put your content out. It's so important. And I hope your followers know that what you have created here is something that is magical, because in a world full of partisan news, you're giving it to people straight, and it's so important. So thank you for all you do.
That's so nice. I hope you guys keep me going with all of that. I'm going to get choked up, but it's really important. It's now more important than ever. And part of the reason why I think there's this feeling of all sorts of feeling out of control is it's very difficult to know who to trust. So if we can just prove and earn people's trust, which is something that I really believe in, if we can protect American stories and tell them the best as possible, which includes the good stuff, the bad stuff, and everything in between, you know, then we're honoring the nation, you know, and that's my service. So I didn't go into the military, but I do believe that journalism is a service, and that's what we're trying to do. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Okay, we'll say goodbye to Ryan now. This is just, wow, what a story, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed, I don't get very emotional. I've been able to be live on television in all sorts of crazy situations. But I felt very emotional during that, because, you know, here, if not me, then who, right? Look at what Ryan did, and look at what she's learning. I was looking right before I did our video this morning, I was looking around my office, and my little boy had come in. By the way, I think I need to put True, my 2-year-old, on retainer. He's like my warm-up act before we do our coffee talks in the morning. But he said to me, he goes, he was, you know, babbling. And I was looking around and I thought, you know, if I had to pack up and go to the airport right now, what would I grab? You know, what would I grab? These people they're leaving everything behind. If you had to go, what would you grab? And you may never come back. This is what so many are facing right now. And I don't want to lose sight with all the politics and the logistics and being able to cover all of that, you know, I don't want to lose sight of that too. So for a lot of mothers out there, you know, they're handling a lot. So thinking about them. All right, guys. Thank you to Ryan. I'll put all of this information on our website, but also underneath this Instagram story, just so you can peruse some of the links that she mentioned, and we'll keep on keeping on, doing the best that we can. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you with more on smarternews.com. Bye, guys.